Happy New Year, render nerds. It has been quite a while. Let's see if I can remember how to do these tutorials. Today we will be trying to create this awesome fluffy little hairball in 3dsMax. Let's see if we can do it in under 10 minutes. Let's go. For the sake of speed, we are not starting with a blank scene today. I already have this little studio set up. I won't bore you with the details, but it's got a nice little chamfered box, 3 spotlights, camera, and some sort of background light there. As always, I am rendering with Corona Render. First things first, let's create a little box. Approximately 200 by 200 by 200 as well. Move it back into position, and that's how it looks now in our scene. Let's make it 150 by 300, and I'm going to edit to this. Maybe it can be a bit more like a kid's toy this time or something, rather than a boring old sphere. Does that look weird enough? Let's go for it. I will just make a backup of my toy and flatten this. Now, we will be using the default hair and fur, and as you can see, we instantly have some hair and fur. Now, if we do a render of this, it won't look great, but already we're getting some results. You can see with the lights that we're getting some nice sort of backlighting there, and actually it looks kind of cool already. I would like it so there's a bit of a handle here, so maybe this is a kid's toy that gets thrown around and the hair flops back and forth with the kid's toy. That's how I'm imagining this new project that we're creating. So let's see if we can do that first. The first thing I'll do is delete our hair and fur. I'll copy this again and turn it into an editable poly, and I'll just delete those. So now we have 2 objects. There is this one that will have our hair and fur, and then this one that has sort of the handle that, you know what, let's just delete the rest of it. Group these, and now we will apply hair and fur to our top one, and it will look like one object. Close. Now back to our camera. I'm just pressing C here. I've only got one camera in my scene, as you can see here, so every time I hit C it instantly goes back there. To get out of my camera, I'm pressing P, and then I'm panning around. I highly recommend shortcuts as much as possible. They're much faster than using buttons. So now, whoops, if we select our object, open, I'm going to just temporarily turn off our hair and fur. I'm going to close this, and using my pivot tool, which is an awesome plugin from Cine plugins, Cine software I think they're called. You can download this for free. With this, I put my pivot at the bottom, super handy. I've also got a shortcut, to put the pivot in the middle, which is Control Q, but you can make that yourself. This one is even simpler. So we're going to go back to our first frame. I will make this animation 100 frames long, same as the last one I made. And we're going to pretend that maybe like someone's holding the base of our toy and rattling it around back and forth. So we'll turn on our auto key, and now that's locked there, so maybe at about frame 25 it has rotated once, twice, and has been thrown over there, and maybe a bit bigger. Lock that key in, we'll go to key 50, we'll rotate it this direction and that direction, and throw it over here and a bit lower lock that, go to 75, rotate that like that and that, whoops, throw it there, lock that key, and let's just see how this plays out. As you can see, it's a bit smooth, so we're going to be editing our curves. I'll show you how to do that in a second, so we get more abrupt movements. So here we're going to rotate it even more, auto key that. Yeah, I like that last one. It's going to give us some nice twirling hair. And if we really want, we can make this looping. The toy itself will be looping in the position, but the hair won't be looping. So let's delete that one. Let's move, and let's just copy these there. So I think that will now create a nice looping pattern. Yep. Nice, easy. Alright, so bloody hell, that's 6 minutes wasted already. I'm not sure if we'll get to this 10 minutes or not. But let's edit our curves. We do that by clicking on that button. Because we have our object, already selected, the curves will automatically be selected. We can scale it so we can see them. Whoa, look at that. And let's just make them a bit more abrupt. How can we do that? Can just change some of these so they are sharper. Make this one sharper. Yeah, this one definitely needs to be a lot sharper. Oops. Just so we get rid of these gentle movements. Whoops. That way it sort of more replicates a random hand rather than these smooth transitions that's happening. I have no idea how this is going to look. Hopefully this is doing something. Bit of noise in there like that. Close that, press play, see how it works. The other thing we might want to do is pause it at some point. So maybe we can bring this down to about 92, copy it to there, bring that forward a couple, and see what happens now. The pause will just give the hair a bit of time to catch up. And I might do one more pause here. So let's see how that looks. And you know what, one more little pause there, and one really quick pause there. So with those pauses, the hair will be able to jerk around a bit more. Jerk around and jump around. Cool. I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go to our first frame. Let's go open and turn our hair and fur back on. Now, you will notice that when we scroll through this time frame, the hair isn't animated yet. It's just sort of static. So it's always pointing straight out. It doesn't have any physics applied to it yet. And the short and simple truth is that we can turn on this dynamics. If we click on pre-computed and run simulation, it will basically calculate how this hair will move in the physical world. I don't want to do that yet because we want the hair to look good first, because if you change the hair settings after you've done these calculations, you have to do them all again, I think. So first we'll get the hair looking nice. So let's go to a random frame. Let's you know what, the first frame will do. The next thing I'll do actually is give a material to these. I'm using Corona, as I've said, and we can use one of their default Corona materials. So I will give it a wooden material, maybe just this pine mat. When I apply a material to an object that has hair and fur, the hair and fur isn't affected by that. It has its own material. So let's click this one as well, apply that there. I might give this another turbo smooth so it looks a bit better. Already looking great. Now, if we click on our hair and fur object, you can see that it has its own material parameters. I don't really bother playing around with these. I like to use a custom shader. So if we apply shader and open up our materials, we can use basic hair from 3dsMax Corona plugin, and maybe I'll just use this hair reddish blonde. So if I click and drag that over there, I can now put this in our shader as an instance and it will automatically update. Just got a bit more life to it, I think. As you can see, because the color is different to our base color, you can begin to see the wood texture a little bit. We will eliminate that by just adding more hair in the end, basically. So what are all these properties of the hair do? These are the main properties here, these general parameters. Hair count is pretty self-explanatory, 10,000 at the moment. That means we've got 10,000 individual strands of hair. Hopefully I can leave this interactive render working while we're going. Hair segments is sort of how many kinks there are to the hair. If there's one hair segment, you'll see that it all straightens out. You can see now that they're straight. I don't know why the display disappeared. And hair segments will also change the way our hair moves when it's flicking around with the dynamic physical properties. Hair passes, I have no idea what that does. Density is pretty self-explanatory, but you can't make it more than 100%, so let's leave it at that. Scale, same problem. Cut length is the same, you can't make it more than 100, but you can change the scale down to 50, so that means everything will get a bit smaller. To make it more dense, obviously, you'll just add more hair counts. But while we're testing out all of these, I'll keep it at 10,000 just to save a bit of time. So we'll leave the scale at 100. We'll leave the cut length at 100 as well, just so it's as long as possible. But if we change the cut length to say 25, that's in millimeters. That means the hair is 2.5 centimeters long. Make this back to 100. Random scale, I'm going to make that 100. So that means some strands of hair will be a lot longer than others. And root thick and tip thickness are the thickness or the length of this little bit here. So that comes to a complete point. If we make this 1, you'll see it comes to a cut point. And same with the root. So I might make the root 5, so it's a lot thinner. I think thinner looks a bit more realistic. We can do things like frizz parameters. Frizz just makes it look a bit more realistic, but what I really like is clumps. So let's do a clump, and you'll see that the hair sort of gets divided. I have to make the strength divided into these sort of parts. So if we make 50, you can see that there's these parts here. The strength determines sort of how much gap there will be and how strong these parts look. I'm going to do 100 clumps and make the strength maybe 0.25, 0.2. Scruffle, let's see what, oops, let's make the strength back to 2. Sorry, it's looking a bit punky now. Scruffle, let's make that 1. What does that look like? 50. And rotation sort of rotates the whole clump of hair. And you can't go higher than 1, I believe. So let's leave that at 0.5. Flatness, what does flatness do? That sort of pushes it down a bit at the end. And you know what? If we add more hair, I might be pretty happy with this. Let's go all the way up to 50,000. Yeah, that's starting to look pretty cool. I don't like this part so much, so I might make this 0.05. To be honest, these clumps aren't terribly important to me. Rotation, I might make 0.1. What happens if we get rid of the flatness? Yeah, let's put the flatness at 0.1. Bring the strength up to 0.2. As I've said, these clumps aren't terribly important. Now I'm going to go back to 10,000, because there's one more parameter that I really like, and that's this multi-strand. Multi-strand basically means that where there's one hair, which is currently count of 0, if we make this count 0, it's actually going to put 3 bits of hair in that same spot. Now that just makes the number of hairs triple, or multiply by however number we put in here, put 5. I don't know what the limit is, but I'm a bit scared to test it out. I usually do a count of 10 when I'm doing a nice rug. I think for now 5 is probably even too much. And what it does is just give a lot more density. Root spray we can make about 0.2, and you'll see that they sort of spray about, and tip spray 0.1. Let's do 50,000. That is calculating relatively fast now. It looks really fluffy. I quite like that. And now let's just set our dynamics. So I will save my files. You know what? Let's put them in our animation cache folder here and call this hair fluff 01. I'm going to turn off my render. I'm going to do a quick save, and I'm going to say pre-computed. Now simulation, I'm going to turn this down to -5 at the start, and the end is 100. I'm going to leave these dynamic properties default, and I'm going to hit run. Now that I've hit run, it's going to take a few minutes to calculate. In fact, it doesn't even look like it's going to take a few minutes, but I will pause the video here. So it's approximately 1 minute later, and my simulation ran, which means now that when we scroll through our time frame here, the hair, as you can see hopefully, is being flung around. So if we render this, this is the problem with hair and fur. It takes a few seconds, sometimes more than a few seconds, to calculate. Obviously I've got 50,000 times 3, so 150,000 strands of hair in there. It does look quite good and natural, but it does of course take a while to render out, to do the pre-computation. So if we go back to, say, this 6th frame, you can see that the hair is being affected by the twirling and rotating and throwing of our kids' toy here. The hair is getting thrown about. It's looking quite nice in the light, and honestly, that's about it. I won't bother rendering this out in the animation because it will be more or less like that first example I showed at the start. You can see I used the same scene with the colored background, the same hair even. The only difference was the shape because I wanted to test out this handle. One last thing, I asked if there's any smart people out there that can make the hair longer. I do realize that you can do that in the styling, and the way that you do that is by having your hair selected, click the styling. I'm going to style just the ends, and I'm going to do it by scale. So basically now you just pull, up makes it bigger, down makes it smaller. So I'm just going to make all of my hair longer. So now when we do our animation, it will really fling right about. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope that's been helpful. 20 minutes, twice as long as the 10 minutes I hoped for, but not too bad. Hopefully you can recreate this, and I'd love to see some results. Thanks, guys.